this is the Barleyman Gladiator Diet. Thought today I would just do a very quick video on calorie counting or logging food. Now, I know there are pros and cons for this. There are those that say you should do it, those that say that you shouldn't do it. Some that say a calorie is a calorie, so if you count it doesn't matter what you eat, that's going to contribute to your weight loss or your weight gain goals. And I'm not going to get involved in any of that because there are arguments for and against each, and within each there's arguments for and against depending on what your philosophical or conceptual framework is. So I'll tell you what I do. I do account for and measure absolutely everything that I eat. Not because I want to keep under a certain calorie level, although I do like to know that I'm not exceeding it too often. Not because I need to check on how much protein I'm eating, because I don't want to have too little protein. And excuse me, it's the whole meat eater protein argument of you've got to have your protein. Yeah, I won't get involved in that either. I record what I eat on a meal by meal, day by day basis so that I can keep an eye on two important macros. So for me, those two macros are carbohydrate and fat, because I philosophically believe, and I've proven from this Barleyman Gladiator exercise that I started 6 weeks ago, I've continued it for another week and I'm continuing to lose weight, that the fat you eat is the fat you wear. Now, I've just also done my bloods. I did those a week ago, and my overall cholesterol, my bad cholesterol, everything has dropped down to absolute minimal levels. So I have the same cholesterol levels as a newborn infant, which is around that 50 to 60 level. So in terms of the effects of not eating fat, I can account for that both physically. I'm not carrying, almost 9 kilos that I was 7 weeks ago, and internally, in terms of my blood and what's going through my veins and my arteries, etc. I have a very, very healthy cholesterol level. So I like to know how much of that kind of fat I'm getting into my body. Now, I've eliminated all processed foods, all animal products. There's no dairy, no fish, no meat or anything like that. And those are the two main things that I have cut out. I've also pulled back quite significantly on the amount of nuts that I was eating, or avocados. I don't have any oil. But in terms of those naturally occurring oils and fats, I've pulled back on the amount that I have there. And my whole philosophy with that is, nowadays you can go and buy a bag of cashews or a bag of walnuts or Brazil nuts or any kind of nuts, an entire bag. They've already been shelled, and you can pretty much pick them up and eat them like they're candy. You can just fill your mouth full of it, grab another one, etc. Now, 10,000 years ago, when we were evolving or we had reached sort of a closer level of evolution that we have now, you didn't have a bag of cashews you could go and get, and if you did find a cashew nut, you had to shell the thing, and you ate them more slowly, simply because they weren't that readily available. So that's what I look at in terms of my consumption. How much might I have eaten if I was living in the wild? So that's what I look at there. So the two most important macros for me are making sure that I keep my carbohydrate from whole food plant-based sources up around that 80 to 85, because I know if I'm doing that, I've got a good energy level. Keeping the fat down to around 5 to 7, because on the two instances where I have jumped up around that 20% from eating things that I normally wouldn't eat, weight started to go up. All right, so that's a direct measure for me. And that's why I measure what I eat on a daily basis, not to get paranoid about the scales, not to get worried about I've eaten a couple of extra calories, etc. In fact, in the last week when I've dropped a whole kilo, I've actually eaten a significantly larger volume of food, i.e. more calories over that week. So I measure what I want to manage, and I want to manage my fat intake, I want to maintain my energy levels, and I want to keep my carbohydrates high, and I just want to make sure that I'm getting around that healthy 0.8 to 0.9 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, which when I look at those numbers, and not specifically for that purpose, when I look at those numbers, I can see exactly that I am sitting around that range, if maybe not just a little bit higher. And then I have a look at the breakdown of those macros across the foods that I'm eating, and I see that I'm getting it from getting like a lot of carbohydrates, etc., and protein and fat as well from oats, which is one of my biggest meals of the day. So what you measure, you can manage. And that's the reason why I use apps like the one I'm using at the moment is MyFitnessPal, because it's pretty good. You can scan things as you eat them. And when I say scan things, I'm talking about things like figs and dates. I'm not talking about candy bars or protein bars or anything like that. So my side of it is measure what you want to manage, and you can manage what you measure. So I measure and keep an account of everything I eat on a daily basis, just to make sure that I'm staying inside that zone, and that if I add something new into my diet, that it's not going to have an adverse effect on those levels that I want to achieve. So that's my take on it, and I'll leave you to whatever decision you want to make about whether or not you believe you should measure what you want to manage.